help the business?
Thank you. Now, I've actually been on this stage talking about our business case before, as has our CFO, Alan Stewart. So when Jim rang me up and said, we're doing another event, my initial reaction was to say, well, I've sort of been there, done that already, but send me the details. And when I looked through it, firstly, the reason I agreed to do it in the end was actually this wasn't about pitching different methodologies about each other, because I don't think this is about which methodology is the best. I think they all have their merits, and it's such an important topic. The second thing is, for us, this has been such an enabler to the progress we've made. So I really do want to talk about this as often as possible to really encourage people to look at what we've done, and if they find it useful, take the lessons from it. And so these are the numbers, and we've put these out before, so I'm not going to dwell on them. But really, what I'm going to try and do is go into a bit more detail than I have done in the past, really explain how we go about it and how we derive benefit from it. And it's just worth reflecting, because when we launched Plan A back in 2007, one of the big things we said was this was about fundamentally changing our business. Not just a sort of team on the side of the business that went after some of this stuff, but how do we embed it to everything we do? And that's what we look at all the time. How do we just embed everything into what we do? And of course, we announced at the time we were going to spend a lot of money in it. Stuart, who was chief exec at the time, said we were going to invest £200 million into making this happen. And it's important to remember we've got a really complex business. So everything we do, we have to work out how do we make this work across a really complex business. We're a clothing business, we're a food business, we're an energy business, we're a finance business. You know, we've got 35,000 product lines at any one time. We source right around the globe. We trade in 58 different territories. So everything we try and do, we have to work out how do we manage that level of complexity from all those different products, different manufacturing streams, different raw materials. And so really delving in some of the detail, and don't worry, you can't see the specific numbers, that's not the point. I'm going to talk you through some of it. But one of the lessons we learned right at the start, we had this £200 million, and we set it as a separate pot. And for the first few months of Plan A, people used to come along and they say, right, I want to do this, I need £500,000, 50k, whatever it might be, and we give them the money and they get on and do stuff. But quickly realised we were spending a lot of money, and it wasn't very sustainable in as much as we were going to run out of money. And we said, well, this isn't the way businesses normally work. You don't have a pot on the side. You all have your own budgets, and you work out how you deliver what you've got to do with your own money. And so we pushed out all the money into all the business areas for them to manage themselves. But because we were doing that, we needed to keep control on it. So we started collecting the data. And this is the spreadsheet we use, and down the left-hand side, you get all of our commitments. So at the time we had 100 commitments, so we literally listed all the commitments. And then we looked at the costs. So what was the OPEX, what was the CAPEX we were spending? So what were we spending against all these commitments that we said we wanted to do? And really this is where it started. But the interesting thing here was, of course, it was our finance people that had to look at this as part of their day job. They managed the budgets, they managed the numbers for their business areas. So it really started to engage our finance people. But really at the start, as I say, it was just about us measuring and capturing how we were spending the money. And what I should say down the bottom left there, across the bottom is we do this at business areas. So we look at our clothing area, we look at our food area, HR, property, IT, logistics. So we really are capturing it at a granular level, really getting under the skin of all these things. And I've got the green lens there because it's our finance people started looking at these numbers and started saying, well, actually, we're starting to see some interesting things happening here, and we're starting to see some benefits coming through. Why don't we start capturing some of those benefits? And that's what we do. So we added on to new columns. So we look at what's the benefit we're getting, what's the avoided cost we're getting, and that's a really important avoided cost we're getting, because that was really important for us. So if we're saving on energy, what's the avoided cost that we're benefiting from? And that really gave us our net P&L, our net benefit. And really that's it. Complex spreadsheet, but actually just capturing numbers. And I feel a bit of a fraud up here with these being set up with these really sort of leading methodologies. I have to say it's not that difficult, but actually for us what it's about is about the learning we get from it and using those learnings and really embedding it in our business, and that's what I'm going to really try and hopefully bring to life today. And I'm just going to go through some examples really. Some I've used before, some hopefully I haven't, and a really simple one, but paper usage. We're a reasonably big paper usage. We set a target that we wanted to save some paper, and the guys went out and they started doing all the really obvious things, and we made some savings, and then it got a bit difficult really, because actually we couldn't figure out a way of making it work to really get a good return on our investment. And it's one of the things we learned, as I say, is if all the time we just kept giving people money to do things, They weren't forced to innovate. They weren't forced to really go out and think about how do we do things differently. Because it was like part of their normal budgets, actually that's what they had to do. They really had to go and think about this. And paper on the face of it, you think, well, we pay for the cost of paper and we pay for toner. We use a bit of energy. Then you start thinking about it a bit more and you start going, well, we've got engineering time and we've got the downtime and the phone calls people have to make every time we have to change the toner and every time the paper breaks, and we've got the capex cost, and then we got the depreciation. And actually we started looking at all of these costs, and actually we worked out it was a much bigger cost than we thought it was. And actually that enabled us to make some investments in some new technology, some new ways of working. And actually we've managed to reduce our paper usage by over 30%, saving us some £2.5 million. £2.5 million on paper usage. So something we couldn't do, we got a real surprise from, but it was really looking through the numbers that enabled us to make the progress. Strawberries. And this example here really is all about food life extension. So one of the big challenges we have as a food retailer is we make this product, we set it out there, and if it doesn't sell in time, it gets to the end of its date, and we have to send it off for recycling. Alternatively, our customer gets home with it and they get a product they're not particularly happy with. And so we wanted to make some real investment into innovation, into extending the life of our food. But again, it requires time, it requires energy, it requires some cash to go and do this. And we were struggling in some areas, but then working with our finance colleague, we started looking at, well, what is the value of that food waste that we're having to deal with? What's the cost of the time of our staff in store that are having to restack the shelves, they're having to go and check the dates to making sure we're legal and compliant? What's the cost of the issues we get dealing with our customers who are unhappy, they've got home with product that's substandard? And so actually starting to look at those costs, starting to really put the numbers against them alongside the money we were going to invest, showed a clear business case for being able to do this. We extended the life of these strawberries by some 7 days. It saves us millions and millions of pounds. So again, really looking through the numbers gave us an enabler to make that progress. Now, often, businesses have sacred cows, things that they've never changed before, and M&S as a business has delivered clothing into store the same way year after year after year after year. In our distribution centres, they put them onto rails, take the rails onto the vehicle, when they get to the store, wheel it off onto the shop floor. That's how we did it year after year. Except at Christmas, when we used to run out of equipment, and they used to be called loose loadings. They'd have to put bars in the vehicle, they'd put the individual items onto the vehicle, get to stores would have to individually take them off, an absolute nightmare. And then someone realised, well, hang on a sec, we get a lot more on that vehicle, and if we're getting more on vehicles, do we need as many vehicles? And if we don't need as many vehicles, are we saving on fuel? So the guy started looking at it from a numbers point of view. What would this mean to our business? And actually, looking through a numbers perspective showed us very clearly it was better for us as a business to invest the money into our retail staff spending a bit more time, but take the saving off the back of less vehicles, using less fuel, and actually being more efficient. So on the back of this and other projects, we took 25% of our fleet off the road, and we've said we're some 23% more fuel efficient now. But it was really, looking through the numbers, gave us a very different view on things, and enable us to change something that the business had been doing year after year after year. So, great progress. And my final example is all about waste. And we set a target when we launched Plan A that we wanted to be zero waste to landfill. And actually, 4 years into Plan A, we still didn't have a clue how we were going to do it. We'd looked at every which way we could, but we were really struggling with all these operational changes and the costs involved. So again, we looked at it from a numbers point of view. We started looking at, well, what's the time it takes our people in store to manage this waste? We used to have to blue dye food waste so that if anyone got into the bins, they wouldn't accidentally eat food which was out of date. What's the time taking in processing? What's all of these different contracts we've got in place? And we started to identify parts of the business that were earning a fantastic revenue because they had lovely clean plastic which they could send off for recycling and get a nice revenue. Other parts of the business who had a huge cost because they're having to deal to get this stuff recycled at a cost. And again, looking at it from a numbers point of view, we started to identify, well, actually, if we centralise that money, do things in a different way, look at contracts in a different way, look at the cost of staffing time, actually we worked out that there was a different way of doing this which could save us money. We've done it, it saves us £5 million a year. Right, I've got my 1 minute warning. So a few more points to make. I'm talking a lot about numbers, but I'm really clear this is not just about financial benefit. We've identified lots of other non-financial benefits, and I call them non-financial benefits because I do think these can be monetised, and we're starting to look at, and I know some of the other speakers here are already doing that. The reason we've not done it to date is actually every time we've identified these, we've never had to have the debate internally about whether it does motivate our staff or whether it is right for our brand. It's always been strong enough. But as we get into much more difficult challenges now, actually starting to monetize some of these is going to become important to us. And just really summing this up, so why would I recommend doing this? For us, it's a progress enabler. It's enabled us to hit commitments and challenges that we weren't able to do before we looked through the financial lens. It builds on the normal way of doing business. This is our finance people doing this day in, day out in the normal way they look at their numbers, but it gives them a different perspective. It's brought our teams together because it's brought people that don't normally work together talking in numbers in a language they can talk together, and brought us together. And it's helped us spot our opportunities. Our finance people now are coming to us with opportunities because they're looking from a numbers perspective. It's another tool to engage people. We can engage our finance people, we can engage our investors, we can engage all different parts of the business in a different way. And it helps us to make the right decisions. And I'm conscious I've run over, but I am going to go on my final slide. It has to be credible. And when we look at our numbers, if we're in any doubt, we go with the credible numbers. That often means we'll put in more cost than we have to and less benefit. But we didn't want anything which was going to be debatable. And we never debate these numbers because they're just calculated in the normal way. But we do have to look at different calculations to get the right numbers. How do we make sure we're looking at the right cost, the right benefit, again, making sure it's credible? I often get asked about product sales, and we pretty much don't put product sales in. If we sell a fair trade t-shirt, chances are if it wasn't fair trade, we'd still sell it anyway, so we're not trying to double count. We have to review it regularly, make sure it's updated. And as I say, it does make us look in our business in a different way. Not just backwardly looking, but looking forwards. As we start to explore new business models, it's given us the tools to be able to do that. And as I say, it's given us this foundation to start to look at a lot of these new metrics. And we're having lots of conversations about natural capital and other ways, social capital, and how we measure some of these. So hopefully you found that useful. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Adam. So, Dorothy, I'm going to have applause at the end. Dorothy and Doug, sorry.
It's a good thing or bad thing?
You'll get one after
well
we've finished, I think.
Dorothy.
So my sense is this is a great example of how you can apply the kind of thinking we've been talking about tonight, but in mainstream financial accounting. And for me, that is the nirvana application. I think we have a lot of challenges to go on the methods and tools, etc. And you're obviously showing a great leadership example. But once we can start building this into how we do our basic project finance, CapEx, OpEx, etc., get it into then profit and loss balance sheet, so forth, we're really into mainstreaming these sort of considerations. I think the big challenges are probably around valuation being at such an early stage, particularly for externalities, and lots of questions about how we do this. But the beauty also of your approach is that, if I'm understanding you right about particularly the paper example, you're using approaches like whole life cycle costing and full cost accounting, and approaches that are there and that are mainstream but maybe haven't been used very much, but obviously then give you much more valuable information to make choices. So that kind of thing is essential. The other thing that struck me that I'd love to know maybe in the discussions later is you must have got some great information here to share with your investors in terms of share price and revenue and that type of thing. And again, we see a lot of investors interested in natural capital valuation and accounting because they're worried about risk, but they want to know about opportunities. So I'd love in the discussion to know a bit more about that.
Great. Thanks, Darcy.
So, I think one of the first things is that the measurement of the benefits of Plan A are owned by your finance team. And that's quite unusual that the benefits of a sustainability program are held and owned by the finance community. And I think given that the numbers that you are publishing and that you use internally are the financial numbers that you use day in, day out to run your business, actually there's no debate that they can be used in decision making. They're directly comparable with all the other costs and benefits within your business. It's very easy to see what the benefits of decisions are going to be. So I think for me the real strength here is about how it helps you to make decisions about how you run your business internally. And I think, M&S has done a great job at demonstrating to the rest of the world that sustainability isn't about delivering things that don't support you in bringing benefits to your business. Actually, this is about doing the right thing for the environment and also bringing significant benefits for your business. So I think you've done a great job at demonstrating the business case. I think you're right. There is stuff that this doesn't capture, and I mean it really only does capture a partial picture of the benefit of Plan A. I mean, for sure, this must affect the way in which your customers feel about you and the stickiness of their relationship with you. It clearly does impact upon your employees and how they feel about working with you, particularly as you have Plan A champions across your business. That must have a benefit to their motivation to work for you. And there's probably a whole load of sort of risks in your supply chain that as a result of what you're doing in Plan A are bringing very significant sourcing benefits that this possibly doesn't capture either. But you recognise very much that this is, this was fit for purpose for where it was, and you'll continue doing that. And there are further developments to come. So, I think it's really good, and I would encourage every business to do this. And if you've got a sustainability program underway right now, why don't you know the financial benefits that it is bringing to your organisation? You've got the tools and techniques there, and it really is just a question of capturing it. And as Adam's shown, when you add it up, it comes to very significant numbers.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Adam. We'll all give him a round of applause.